If you could see anybody return the new kickoff that's unorthodox and maybe won't return a new kickoff, who would it be?
Mailata's definitely up there.
Oh my.
Dude, it would be so. You got to do it like I don't know enough about rugby to name the plays correctly, so forgive me. But you have to do it where like one guy receives it and then he just tosses it so the returner gets it with a full head of steam. He's already moving at velocity.
It's like a reverse.
Yeah. Mailata 100%. I would watch just for the enjoyment.
Oh, no question. That'd be a good one. All right, we got the right guy on the show.
The authority.
Huh?
The
authority.
Do you have a nickname, Ben?
Not really. Everybody at the Ringer calls me Solak because there were like 9 Bens there before me, but that's about it.
All right, so there's a take that I wanted to talk to you about that somebody just alerted me of when I walked in the door. They were like, do you know Ben Solak thinks that food takes too long, that eating is inefficient? And I just wanted to say I totally agree with you.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I got remarkably more support for that take than I thought I was going to. Honestly, when I piloted it, I thought I was going to be just the one man on the island. Though I will say most linemen are not with me on this one. I guess defensive linemen probably I get a better representation with, but Golick was pissed, dude. He was not pleased.
I'm sure Golick was mad. I'm just a busy guy, and I don't like things that are pointless. You know, like to me, lunch is one of the most pointless things of all time. Not eating lunch, but when somebody says, do you want to do lunch? I'm like, do lunch? What the fuck do you mean? Can't we just meet up and talk?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I got stuff to get done today. I got chores out there. I got chores in here. What, sitting down for lunch for an hour for a salad? What are we talking about?
What's a breakfast for you? Make loves this. What's a breakfast for Ben Solak, and how long does it take to prepare?
So I'm a big intermittent fast guy because like I don't love the it takes too long. So I usually am passing on breakfast. That said, when I'm like if I'm going for it, I love to make like an overnight oats or like an oatmeal. And I'll go instant oats to overnight oatmeal, anything in between. But just give me like a quick mush that has the calories that are necessary. Throw some berries on there so it tastes good, nice and easy.
In college, I used to eat top ramen raw. That's how committed to your bid I am.
Well, also, you would often, it could be kale, it could be spinach, but you would just by the fistfuls put leafy greens into your mouth.
That's right. And that makes me, this is the last thing I want to ask Ben about this thing is like half of your media that you post as non-football related is your garden and your fishing expeditions. That to me takes a while. That's part of the food process. And so it is a little bit contradictory that you rush through breakfast, but you spend all the time out in your garden harvesting.
Yeah. So the thing with the gardening and the fishing is that I enjoy the process and the fact that like I'm not doing it for the food at the end. It's just for the love of the game. It's funny. My wife she loves to cook, and that's her thing. That's her joy. And I try to participate in that as much as I can. But the garden works great because like I like the science of it. I like the raising the plants of it and like seeing it grow up from seed. It's crazy and it's fun to take care of. It gets me outside, putter around with my hands. And then the moment the tomato exists on the vine, I'm like, okay, mission accomplished. Like I'm done. Like that's what I wanted to pull off. I wanted to grow the zucchini. I got the zucchini. Okay. That's where my wife comes in and she's like, all right, sick. What I wanted was the zucchini. I didn't want to deal with dirt and fertilizer and trowels on my hands and knees. I just wanted the zucchini. So I hand it off right there, and then we're cooking zucchini.
If Drake May were a vegetable in your garden.
The sweet potato takes a lot of time to grow, takes an investment, but really worth it at the end. I like a Drake May. And I think I like him in New England better than a lot of people do. Now, I got faith Drake May.
Do sweet potatoes grow in shitty soil? Because that's my next question. Mm-hmm. You know, like if you had a garden, if you had 3 gardens outside and you planted sweet potatoes in Chicago, if you planted sweet potatoes in DC, if you planted sweet potatoes in Foxborough, I feel like the ones in Foxborough right now would have a harder time, you know, turning into big healthy sweet potatoes that Ben Solak's going to want to chef up.
You can grow a sweet potato in an average soil. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are generally pretty good for it. They just take a long time. Yeah.
All right.
So I do. The soil in New England, I agree. A little worried about that relative.
Well,
to
the soil just got a little bit less friendly to said sweet potato because Zeke Elliott just signed with the Cowboys. He was their leading receiver in New England last year. So I guess maybe we'll just start there. Is like, you know, how do you project, and is it unfair to I say this every year with high picks, like, is it unfair to evaluate Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams the same, because they are being dropped into completely different situations. You don't see guys walk in to great situations like Caleb has. And I'm not handicapping Drake May. He's not like my favorite guy in the draft, but I do feel for him walking into that situation in New England. If you were the Patriots, how would you play this out? Would you start him right away? Would you protect him? What are some things they can do to kind of take care of him early in his career?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right? You invested in the guy. Now, how are you going to bring him up? The first thing that I always say is that people learn in different ways, right? Everybody wants to sit quarterbacks, understandably so. But if a guy learns by going out there and making mistakes, which I think is a very real thing that you've seen quarterbacks do in the league, then you kind of have to let him go out there and understand there are some rookie lumps that you can't take holding the clipboard, right? There's some bumps in the road that you can't, the bullet's got to be live. And if that means you'll lose a week 7 game to the Bills in 2024, it's worth it. You might beat him in 2025, right? And so your job is to get the guy into the building, and then, all right, he's QB2, he's behind Jacoby, you're installing the playbook. If you like how he's learning back there and you feel good about sitting him for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, go for it. But if you feel like, all right, like it's when we're out there on the practice field that he's, making a mistake and he comes back the next drive and he doesn't make it again, we need to get him out there and let him make those mistakes early. Let him make them right now. So that way he's not making them down the road. Evaluating him can be challenging in bad contexts. But I always like to remind people, man, the 2021 Jaguars, Urban Meyer, one of the worst managed teams we ever saw, 3-14, first overall pick. Trevor Lawrence was a rookie in that team. They weren't good. They were a terrible team, barely won a game. But we all watched Trevor and went, oh, yeah, okay. Like, that guy's an NFLer, right? Now, people had, he's the next Andrew Luck expectations, and he didn't hit that, nor has he hit that over the last few years. But you could still watch him, even when he was throwing 120 targets to Marvin Jones and 100 to Laviska Shenault and playing behind a patchwork offensive line. You could still watch him and be like, oh, yeah, no, I see the NFLer in there. Like, we clearly hit on the guy. We know he's good. You can have that with Drake May, where he walks out there and like the wide receiver room isn't ready and the offense doesn't work for you and they're losing games, but still every week you're watching him going, okay, they got a guy for sure. Yes. So there is value to starting a dude, even when the personnel may not be ready for him yet.
Now, if you were to make a case for the top 3 quarterbacks selected, and it's a hypothetical 5 years down the line, let's finish this sentence with each of their names. Caleb Williams, let's start with him, was not successful because
he probably never leveled out the risk and reward, right? Caleb loves to believe that he's got a better play if he just gets outside of the pocket. He's got a better play if he just kind of gets around a rusher. And most of the time, I'm pretty confident the risk is worth the reward with him because the throws that he can make. But he just is a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too willing to get to that second reaction play and just never stays in structure.
Yeah, and how about for Jaden Daniels?
The frame and the play style. I'm worried about Jaden. My line on Jaden pre-draft was no one's going to be right on him because he's such a polar quarterback. He's like, all right, like if this works, he's going to be undefendable. And if he starts to accumulate injury and he can't run, or if teams are really good at getting him off his first and getting him outside of the pocket, this is going to become untenable. It's going to be like, watching Jalen Hurts last year when he was hurt. And you're just like, all right, like, this is not a real offense. Right. It's not stressing defenses out the way that it needs to. And so to me, like, injury concern and play style concern. The amount he gets outside of the pocket, takes hits, he's one read and scramble guy. That's what's going to hurt.
And ironically, he kind of reminds me from a frame standpoint of RG3. He's a little bit more slender. He runs the same way. Like they're athletic. They can hurt you with their legs, but they're.
And people love to bring up like Fields 240, Richardson 245. These guys got hurt. These big body types. But I mean, like Chris, and I think that folks still know, like this is a big people hit little people game, and Jaden Daniels is thin, right? It's less about the shot that he takes when he's actively a runner and he's trying to avoid contact and take glancing blows. It's more about the shot that he takes when he breaks the pocket, he's scrambling to his right, and he doesn't know that the edge rusher took a long loop and is right behind him. And it's that contact that comes when he's not protecting himself, where he doesn't have the body armor to take it. That's what worries me.
And is there anything from Drake's style of play outside of the New England pitfalls from a roster standpoint?
Or Joe Milton, or could be the guy.
Or Joe Milton. Yeah, Drake doesn't take a 5-yard route when there's a 50-yard route that might be open down the field. And that's the problem with him is Drake's big game hunter. And it's nice when you get the picture with the 8-point buck, but sometimes you go home empty handed. And so it's a little bit of the same risk management that we talk about with Caleb. Caleb's more so, getting outside of structure and kind of ignoring the first read of the play. Drake is more, listen, like sometimes we play for 2nd and 8. Sometimes we play to stay on script. We only have so many 3rd and 9 calls, young man. We can't keep getting to this long down and distance, especially if we can't pass protect for you, which might be an issue in New England. And so for him, it's being more willing to take the underneath stuff right now and not try to win every single game in 1 or 2 plays.
I think what also might help Drake May is, like, when you think about quarterbacks going to your rookie year, who are you going to be practicing against? I mean, that defense is not anything to sneeze at, dude. That's like a pro defense. And when you're going to see those guys every day in practice, at least that balances out some of the ineptitude on offense, because you're going to be used to dealing with skilled players on the other side of the field.
And if Drake in college, both like 2 years ago when he had the really nice 2022 season, and then in 2023 when it was a little shakier, man, he knew that if he left the field at 28-28, he was coming back on the field at 28-35. Right. Like defensively, when they went up against any real offenses, they just were not consistently getting stops. And so it's going to be a thing for him to learn how to put that Superman cape up and let another player win the game for him, not necessarily on his own offense, but just on your defense, dude. Like, if you can get us some good field position, just pick up a first down, don't throw an interception, you give that opposing offense 85 yards to go, man, like, our defense can do some work for you. They can keep you in a friendly spot.
And Caleb's going to have the same situation in Chicago with more talent offensively, because that defense is going to be tough to practice against and all that stuff. All right, so let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do the Michael Penix thing, because initially when it happened, full disclosure, Macon and I were like, I can't hate it. Like, I know that there are a lot of very smart football people that hate it, and they look at things glass half full, and they look at Kirk's contract, and they look at some of the other holes. But when I looked at Atlanta last year, I said 10-win team if DoorDash Desmond Ridder is not their quarterback. I think the roster, especially offensively, is in a better place than most people think. There are pieces defensively that they had to fill, right? I would say this. You're sitting there at 8. There is a risk that if you pass up on him, there's a reality where they love him more than Bo Nix, and they love him more than J.J. McCarthy. I know people say J.J. would have been the perfect guy to do this with because of age and that sort of thing. But I look at 8 and I say there were a bunch of teams that were passing up on defensive players, right? And a lot of them might have had needs defensively. I don't think the bridge to this working out is that long. It's just got to work out. If Michael Penix is a pro quarterback, I think we'll look back at this and say, hey, good move. What do you see any side of that argument?
I think the core of the argument, which is that we want to be investing in QB2, is sound, right? I think you saw the Jordan Love pick with Aaron Rodgers, the Jalen Hurts pick with Carson Wentz, the Lamar Jackson pick with Joe Flacco. Over the last 5-6 years, teams have been more willing to invest in quarterback 2 earlier. You've also seen over the last couple of years, especially post-COVID and post-improved concussion protocols, more and more quarterbacks start a game in a season than ever before, right? There's just more reps for QB2 and QB3. There's more instances in which you need QB2 or QB3. This also goes to expanding, schematic work, right? The Shanahan offense and all these guys, they've made it so much easier to win with quarterback 18 league-wide, right? With quarterback 20 league-wide. So if you can find a guy who just is functional at the NFL level, you can actually build a much better offense out of him than you usually could. So the last 5-6 years, man, really been defined by quarterback 2 becoming a more valuable position, and the Falcons said we want to invest in this. So the core of that is good. 8 overall to take QB4 6 weeks after $100 million guaranteed to Kirk Cousins is where you lose me, right? I agree we should be investing in QB2. This feels like leaps and bounds more than we should be. This feels like really, really pushing the envelope here. Now, you made the point, if Penix is good, then the Penix is good, and that's always the case with the draft.
If he ends up being QB2, that's the thing.
You get yourself a good player, player. Make no bones about it. A lot of the value of rookie contract quarterbacks, though, is the fact that they are so much cheaper than replacement guys. Yeah, and so you're going to get multiple years in which your quarterback room costs dramatically less than the other quarterback rooms with plus starters. Well, if you're dealing with Kirk Cousins' dead cap money, and also Penix at the 8th overall contract is not Jalen Hurts with the 53rd contract or Lamar Jackson with the 32nd or Dak Prescott with the 113th or whatever it was. Yeah, you're not getting as much meat on the bone as the other guys did. And because you drafted the 24-year-old, by the time he gets to the end of his first contract, he's already going to be in his prime. So you're not getting as much meat on the bone as the other guys did. So that's where I feel you lose me, is I feel like the core of the philosophy made sense, but the execution here just feels like we went way too far at what is like largely a good effort.
Do you think it would be viewed differently at all if we said Kirk Cousins has a 2-year contract, which I think is how the Falcons effectively
that's how they view it
with the decrease in dead money?
So I certainly think it can be. Again, you just gave him the deal, and that's what confuses me. If he was worth 2 years, it would be about $100 million in terms of the guarantees. If they cut him after 2 seasons, he'll make about 100 total. If he was already on that, and that was sitting there and that was hanging over your head, but you wanted to invest in QB2, I'd understand that a little bit more than actively choosing to bring Cousins in and then make the selection relative to like bringing in a Jacoby Brissett. Think about the Giants in 2023, in the spring of 23, 13 months ago. The Giants said, we want to give Daniel Jones $160 million over 4 years. And then 13 months later, they were like, we want to take a quarterback at 6. We don't know if we like this as much. They made the investment, but then got another year of data, said, let's move off our mistake fast. The Falcons did it in 5 weeks. It's the time frame that is really shocking.
It makes you wonder privately if Kirk said something to the effect of, I'm going to play 2 more years and I'm going to raise my kids. Like, I want to move back to wherever I live. And, like, football has been great to me, but I want to play 2 more years. And if they'd have said something like that, if he'd have said something like that, he might have unknowingly set the wheels in motion for a replacement.
Yeah.
But also it would make it a lot more palatable, I think, if you knew this is a 2-year rental for Kirk. Because another thing is, all right, I found out today, I believe that Will Levis is the oldest quarterback in the division in the AFC South. Okay, Michael Penix has a shot to be the oldest quarterback in the division when he first takes a start. I mean, you look at like Derek Carr's deal, you look at Baker Mayfield down in Tampa, Bryce Young, they could be hitting, all 3 of those teams could be hitting the reset button in 2 years. And let's say Michael Penix has a little Jordan Love in him. I just think there's a universe where this works out. And I also think the team's good enough. Yes, this does, I don't know how you quantify it, knock down their chances of being the best they could be over the next 2-3 years because of the salary and some of the prohibitive stuff there. But I would say it's like a 5 to 7% decrease, which is major, but you are kicking the can down the road to increase your successes over the long haul, in my opinion. And I don't mind the long game. That's all I'm saying.
And I love when teams are willing to make long-term investments. Yes. My thing is always, as a general manager, you better know you're going to be there. I'm not trying to sow a seed and let somebody else read the benefits. Terry Fontenot's in year 4. He has made 4 top 10 picks. Terry Fontenot has 4th overall Kyle Pitts, 8th overall Bijan Robinson, 8th overall Drake London, 8th overall Michael Penix. Dude, if this team isn't good, you brought up offensively. There's no team in the league that's this invested in offense right now. With all these picks, all these second contracts in the offensive line, this team isn't good. I'm worried that when Penix is taking those precious steps, we're seeing if this pick was worth it, there's somebody else sitting in Terry's seat.
He might not get to see it, and and that's all well and good. But I also would say this, and I said this the other night, like, if you look at what the Atlanta Falcons have done over the past couple of years in the first round, they have been unorthodox, right? And I would say that I don't blame the Pitts thing on the pick. I blame it on the execution of the pick. I think Bijan's otherworldly talented, and I think Drake London, everybody thought he was slow. You draft a slow wide receiver, you draft a running back in the top 10. People have shake their heads at these guys before, and it's worked out. So I'll just say this, Arthur Blank giving him the keys. I saw the argument afterwards. Like with so many things taken out of context nowadays, people just jump at the opportunity to attach context to it. I don't think Arthur is going to be in that room if he doesn't know that there's a possibility they take Penix. I think they could have been arguing about like the sequencing of trading back or trading down, but just Arthur to have the faith in Terry to make that pick, I think says a lot. And we'll see. I mean, Arthur's pretty patient, right? I think Atlanta's got reasons to be excited, but maybe just a little bit less in the immediacy now because they made this decision. So, all right, that's enough on them. Let's talk about the Eagles, okay? Because we got a lot of Birds fans here. We knew you with your Birds background, but like, I love the Quignon pick. I love addressing corner. That's a burning building. Like, put the fire out immediately. I know where he's going to fit. Where does Cooper DeJean fit in Vic's scheme?
Yeah, great question. I think that if they took Cooper DeJean at 22, Quinion doesn't make it there, and they were comfortable taking DeJean at that spot, they would have said, hey, outside corner 2, we're going to stick him there. We think he's a corner for sure. We need the spot. He's great fit there. We know he can play that position. Once you take Quinion at 22 and you get DeJean at 40, you say, oh, Cooper DeJean can play a lot of spots. Might be a safety for us. Might have been, you change your tune a little bit, and rightfully so. I remember when Vic Fangio took over the defense in Denver. And in 2019, he signed Kareem Jackson from the Texans, who had played corner his entire time in Houston, and he moved him to safety. Yeah. And they just said, hey, like, that people say it's strong safety. It's not really like box safety. You're having him play over the slot, and you're having him, whoever number 2 ends up being tight end, and he's stepping down into the box very so often, kind of more of the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson role. I think that's what they're going to envision for DeJean early, because that's the way that he more easily gets on the field. Now they have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Right. So
and so you already have a guy that you really like over slots. Maybe DeJean is your tight end matchup guy. You're going up against a team that runs a big slot. They run a Chris Godwin. You want to go handle that. Michael Pittman, you want to go handle that. Okay, we're going to ask DeJean to take this guy because he's a little bit of a bigger body. So it's unclear. I think that what you have to decide is when you walk into camp, you kind of give the guy the playbook and you see, all right, we're going to give you some reps at outside corner. We're going to give you some reps at box safety, right, in a strong safety spot, and try to figure out where you work. But pretty quickly, you need to decide what you're going to ask him to do in year one. Because being a rookie is drinking out of the fire hose, right? I mean, like, it's a lot of information coming at you. And that Vic Fangio defense, man, that's a son of a gun, right? If you are asking a young player to learn 3 separate roles, right? Okay, our nickel spot, our corner spot, and our safety spot, all in camp, like that, I just think you're not setting him up for early success. And so I think that get him in there, get him in rookie minicamp, figure out where you want to start him in year one. And then if he ends up just backing up Reed and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety all year, that's okay. If he ends up being corner 3 on the outside all year, that's okay. But make sure you onboard him correctly so you set him up for success down the road.
Last year, this time, Eagles draft was an A+. You look back a year later, how are you grading it? Jalen Carter at 9, Nolan Smith at 30, Steen, Brown, Ringo.
Yeah, I mean, like, I still think you have an A draft there. Steen is going to get starting reps this year. I think when they drafted him last year, the expectation was not going to play and then step in. We got to see what he is. Nolan Smith was not going to get starting reps.
They knew that was going to be a developmental pick.
Yeah, they drafted a 239-pound edge rusher, right? You're not expecting him to walk out. And I remember, I think he had to play a late game against the Giants. And in run defense, man, like, Nolan was just trying to survive, right? Body type-wise, he was just going to take a little bit of time. Sidney Brown, this guy who's going to compete for starting reps. They had a really loaded roster last year, and so it was understandable to not get early production out of those guys. They had great veterans. Carter's the interesting one, where, through 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, Jalen Carter, best defensive player in the draft, one of the best rookies, dominant force. And then he started to lose gas a little bit. And you had Carter now and Jordan Davis, 2 Georgia drafted defensive tackles who've just faded down the stretch for you. And so what you got to be able to ask is, can we get 18 weeks, 19 weeks, 20 weeks of production out of these guys? Because Fletch ain't in the building anymore. Javon Hargrave's in San Francisco, right? Like this is the core now, is these 2 defensive tackles. And if you are going to fade in December at that position, I mean, your entire defense is going to suffer for it. We saw that a little bit last season. So Carter, man, like, that kid can play. Holy smokes, he's so good when he's on. I just want to make sure he's on for the entire
He's
game.
incredible, and I think to your point, if your core is the defensive tackle room, you're going to have to justify, the investment in them, and then also, get some production to where you feel like you're unlocking their skill set. I think it's all about the guys behind them, which is why I'm so happy that they went that direction. Because as you saw last year, as the secondary started to fall apart, as the run fits were worse for the backers, everybody in that back second or sevens really suffered. And I think as a result, those guys inside had to be, asked to do a little bit more than they're supposed to at that stage in their career. I agree. So I think if they can put the fire out behind them, you're going to see even better play from those defensive tackles. We'll all be happy. Okay. Trotter, where's he fit? Because, really cool story. I'm a second generation NFL guy. I think about, like, if I'd have gotten drafted by the Raiders or something like that, but, like, he didn't strike me as a top end athlete. And where does he fit? And then also, as a bigger conversation, we've had it on this show before. I think often we look at second generation players and we say, oh, they're going to be athletic, like their genetics, this, that, and third. If you look down a list of second generation football players, not all of them are more talented or even close to as talented as their dads. So what do you actually get in getting a second generation player? Like, why is that attractive?
Right. I think for the Eagles, specifically with Trotter Jr., you get great vibes, which sounds like a joke, but also Elizabeth Itten, right? Trotter's going to have a lot of support from the fan base, going to have a lot of patience from the fan base. They're going to want to see a player like that succeed, which helps a guy at least mentally transition from the college to the pros, right? Now, it also comes with some high expectations, right? And he's not like a first-round pick, so it's not like they're expecting him to be his pops tomorrow. But in general, I do think that, like, okay, putting 54 on in the midnight green, getting the big cheers in the preseason, it's going to at least help a guy mentally feel like, all right, like I can go and I can succeed with this team. Mr. Lurie, Howie, like, some of those guys. It smooths the transition. For the roster, I mean, linebacker play in Philadelphia last year was a travesty. There's no two ways around it. So Nakobe is back from injury, but you can't really put too many eggs in that basket because he's been banged up now for the last couple seasons. You roll the dice on a Devin White. You roll, he's a highly drafted round 1 guy who underachieved down the road in Tampa. You roll the dice on a Zach Bond and Oren Burks. These guys were linebacker 3s on their respective teams. Maybe they can do a little bit more here in Philadelphia. And then you take a Trotter in round 5. It's a little bit of snapping the pool stick, Joker, throwing it out and saying, all right, we're going to have tryouts. Somebody win a job here, right? I don't think they're going to walk into camp saying any one of these 5 players is emphatically, clearly a starter for us. Like, this guy's the green dot. We know we're starting him. We go. I think early on the favorite is Nakobe and Devin White. And then after that, you're trying to fill out the roster. I agree with you on Trotter, where film-wise, I've got a 6 foot, 230-pound guy who just athletically change a direction. I think it's a little bit linear, doesn't take on blocks super great. Like, he feels like a day 3 pick. He is a day 3 pick. Contribute on special teams, right? Be able to fill your role well and be a backup linebacker. And when you get in there, he has to succeed the way he did at Clemson, which is by being wicked smart, right? And a lot of his best plays at Clemson were seeing it before it happened and then shooting a gap, beating a block, and being there before the back got there. And so there's a world where that succeeds, but when you're betting on an athlete that's this undersized to win at NFL size, you really are betting on like a David Long sort of a guy, right? Where, okay, he's like 5'11", 225, but he's quick as a whip and he's so smart that he can get away with it. And that's a thin bet to make, right? That doesn't happen every so often. And so he'll have his opportunities. There's a wide open room, but they're dice rolling everywhere on linebacker, and they're hoping somebody.
Am I correct in seeing this on this list? Like Joe Burrow's dad was a defensive back in the NFL. Is that
that I did not know?
I'm looking at DK Metcalf. His dad was a guard. Was he a guard in the NFL?
I knew Metcalf.
I mean, so this is crazy. It's like I always say Jackie Slater, like perfect example. If it worked that way, then Matt Slater would be a tackle. Kids come in all different shapes and sizes. Me and my brothers are like Russian dolls. We all have different talents and talent levels. And so it's like you try to project these second-generation players. If you're going to do it just on athleticism, the game has also changed a lot from generation to generation. So you're comparing the last generation of athletes to this generation.
Jim Burrow out of Hampton, Virginia, went to Nebraska and played for the Green Bay Packers.
He's from Hampton?
For 1 season.
No way.
Jim Burrow's from Hampton.
See, how does that get buried, man? There's some really shocking ones in this thing here.
Chris, would you have wanted to be drafted by the Raiders? 2008.
I mean, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. It would have been fine. It would have been a lot better if the Rams had just picked Matt Ryan and I'd ended up in fucking New England or something, slid to 6. You know what I mean? All right. So another team that was really hot and heavy on the DBs and should have been was the Lions. And I thought they had a really nice draft. Big fan of Brad Holmes to trade up and get Arnold. They traded up a couple times. Rakestraw, who's just as versatile as his name. He can get in there and he can tackle. He can be a rake. He can be a straw. You can drink out of him. You can rake the infield with him. The guy will put his hat in there. I really like Ennis Rakestraw, dude.
Number 9 on my big board.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah,
he fell a little bit, but like, what can you say about Detroit and what they're building here? And really the NFC North in general, all drafting well. Like they're all having at least heralded draft class in the immediacy.
Yeah, NFC North I think is going to be real good this year. And yeah, for Detroit, I think Detroit approach free agency the way you're supposed to, where you go and say, all right, like let's plug all of our gaps so that way if we have to play a game tomorrow, we'll be okay. They go and get Carlton Davis. Davis is corner 1, Cam Sutton is corner 2. Like we're fine. And then Cam Sutton legal situation, all of a sudden there's no Cam Sutton. And so now you walk into the draft with the last thing that you want, which is like a very obvious need. And everybody's going to know kind of the direction you want to go and the players you're going to target. So to be able to trade up and go grab Terrion Arnold, who I think can be week 1 starter, corner 2, can go out there and play NFL caliber athletes, experienced at Alabama. He's got wonderful movement skills for a corner outside the top 20. Great. And then to chase that with Ennis Rakestraw and to understand we can't just draft a rookie and set it and forget it. Like, oh, because Terrion Arnold will be good. Like, no, it's a rookie, man. Like you can never be too confident in your drafting, which I know is a funny thing to say about Brad Holmes right now because he's walking around with his chest out. But you have to be willing to say, okay, like if Arnold doesn't hit, let's go and get ourselves another dart throw in Rakestraw, Rakestraw's got short corner syndrome where he's so good, but then he's short. And so he's even better because he's mad that he's short.
Mad he's short.
He's like, everybody's undervaluing me because I'm under 6 foot. So I'm just going to be even better at what I'm good at because I'm mad that people don't think I'm good. I loved Rakestraw. And so, yeah, there's a world where Rakestraw is able to get on the field in the slot and Brian Branch plays more traditional safety reps. They got some versatility there now, which is nice. This was the right approach for them. And then on day 3, Brad Holmes traded a future 3rd-round pick to go get it at 6'8" tackle out of Boston, out of British Columbia, because he just can now. He's Brad Holmes. He can do it.
That seems to, we were talking about like a Mailata thing. This guy's people didn't even know he'd get drafted. This kid from BC, Giovanni Manu, he's really raw, and not Boston College, British Columbia, 6'7", 350.
Yeah,
so
healthy.
Yeah,
and he ran sub 5. I want to say ran like in the 4.9s. Yeah. And they're talking about early playing him at guard before kicking him to tackle, which is just stupid. Imagine him pulling.
Oh my God,
that's ludicrous dude. Stuff.
These times are insane. Just since when I ran, dude, it was like I ran a 4.78, and I was like, awesome. This guy's 350 running a 4.9. Like he could catch me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Somebody in my mentions the other day was trying to convince me that they're going to have him return on the new kickoff, and I was like, nah, I don't know about that.
That'd be sick, though. That'd be sick. If you could see anybody return the new kickoff that's unorthodox and maybe won't return a new kickoff, who would it be?
Mailata's definitely up there.
Oh, my.
Dude, it would be so. You got to do it like I don't know enough about rugby to name the plays correctly, so forgive me. But you have to do it where like one guy receives it and then he just tosses it so the returner gets it with a full head of steam. He's already moving at velocity.
It's like a reverse.
Yeah. Mailata 100%. I would watch just for the enjoyment.
Oh, no question. That'd be a good one.
Hey, Ben, thank you for having the courage to say that Washington did not have a great draft. It seems like, you have a bunch of picks. You have a new GM. We praised your draft. You got the cool quarterback.
Everything's great.
Everything's great. I didn't like it, Ben. I didn't like it one bit.
Yeah, and it's weird because they, in free agency, kind of did the whole, like, all right, just chuck veterans at every problem, right? Okay, just get names that we know, and that way we're decently functional.
Dan Wilkinson.
And then in the draft, didn't move around too much, right? There was rumors, they're going to move up aggressively to get like a top tier tackle. Didn't do that. Just kind of stayed and picked. And they're kind of in shotgun mode right now, where they're just trying to get a wide dispersal of options, and then they're going to evaluate the roster over the course of the season, which is fine. Ben Sinnott at just outside the top 50. Like, I wouldn't have been rushing to go get tight end 2. Luke McCaffrey at 100. Go ahead. Great bloodlines.
Another second generation guy. Why isn't he athletic?
Yeah. But it's I don't know. Like, I feel like if his name was Luke Wilson, this guy was going to pick 180.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of the film, I think McCaffrey's carrying a lot of weight for you there. So like, I like Mikey Sainristil. I like Johnny Newton. There's a couple players I like, but in terms of guys that I just wasn't huge on in this class, Washington ended up with a few of them. Obviously, the pick at 2 also is a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these quarterbacks are going to be good and some of them aren't. And if you made the wrong pick at 2, there's going to be a lot of screenshots for the next few years. And so I didn't think it was an out of the park class for Adam Peters.
I really liked the Michigan corner. I did not realize, especially when he was shutting down Marv, that he's like 5'8" in change.
I know.
It's crazy.
Why is that?
I don't know. Plays taller.
I mean, he doesn't like short
corner
guys.
theorem.
Yeah, I was just speaking of not speaking of anything. I was going to make a different transition,
no,
but I want to go to Buffalo. That's an even better transition. Let's just, speaking of Buffalo, let's go to Buffalo. That's how I'm going to transition everything on the show now. Speaking of Buffalo, do you think the Bills nailed it? Because I don't think there's anybody who had more pressure on them than Brandon Beane, considering the window or lack of window that seems to be open in Buffalo, and needing to go get a wide receiver. I thought the body type was important in Keon Coleman. That's the kid from Florida State they picked up at the beginning of the second. Big guy. And actually, I heard somebody mentioning your show, it reminded them of Colston. And the Joe Brady connection of being in New Orleans, having a bigger body guy, right? I think that's cool. I think passing on the speedster, Worthy, a lot of people look at that and say, what are you doing? But waiting your turn and getting this big body kid who can play different areas, and then also he's like catch radius guy, because Josh Allen wants a catch radius guy. I mean, like, he's going to spray the ball a little bit. So what do you think about this pick, and how do you think Buffalo did in general?
Yeah, I know Xavier Worthy ran the 4.21, but I can get speed down the street. Like, there's so many track athletes now at receiver, and there's diminishing returns too. Like, 4.21 is sick because of the record, but 4.21 isn't really that much different than 4.31 in terms of how I'm putting you on the field and what you're doing for me, right? There are some diminishing returns here. Coleman, now I don't get X receiver body type, 3-level route running, the catch radius. I don't get that at 33 all the time, right? And wide receiver tends to be a great position to draft. There's a lot of guys, but in general, this is a great body type to be able to get. The Colston comp is a really good one. I like that a lot. I've been saying Michael Thomas because again, it's like a bigger body. But you're going to use him. You're going to use him short and intermediate. You're going to use him to win in those tight windows and zones, kind of underneath, and he can do the downfield stuff. I know Bills fans really are worried about, he's got a bad contested catch rate, and Josh Allen doesn't like to throw to contested catch receivers. Because if you remember, a big thing in Allen's early career with the Bills was they were like, Josh Allen's really big, throw it far down the field, let's go get Kelvin Benjamin. And then he just never wanted to throw it to him because he likes to see players open. Right. I think that was true of young Josh Allen. Josh is a grown boy now. Yeah. All right, he's a big professional quarterback. Yeah. He can throw to a guy who's a little bit covered. Like I watched some of the interceptions Josh threw. Trust me, he will throw to a guy who's covered.
Yeah, he's going to do that.
Yeah. So I know that Bills fans worry a little bit about the contested catch stuff, but I think that a lot of Coleman's contested catch stuff in college was a response to the quarterback that was throwing him the ball and just kind of throwing him into coverages that he really shouldn't have been targeted in. You'll see this guy separate. You see this guy run. He runs better routes than people are giving him credit for. And in a room that had Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, you needed a body of this type. So I love the Coleman pick for them. Cole Bishop out of Utah has the sort of traits that start typically in this Sean McDermott defense. I like that for them. Cedric Van Pran Granger, great name, Cedric Van Pran Granger, who was the center out of Georgia, is the sort of guy that they need to kind of protect themselves because they lost Mitch Morse this year, and so you get a developmental guy behind it. It was a good draft for Brandon Beane. The problem is, Bills are still what they are, right? Bills, they lost a lot of talent. They've been getting older. We've seen enough data at this point to know that if they sneak through the AFC, it's going to be by the skin of their teeth. And so I don't think this was like the Bills are back draft. I think it was, the Bills are trying to survive draft.
I think they also look at Josh Allen and think like, hey, what did he not do in that playoff game? He did everything. Diggs catch that ball. They make that field goal. Like they probably end up playing in the Super Bowl. I think he's that good. I think they know he's that good. And I think you look at not to say he's Mahomes, but you look at Kansas City. It wasn't like Kansas City was throwing to a lot of people last year in Patrick Mahomes. So, they can get by if you've got a truly generational quarterback, which I think Josh Allen is. You can get by throwing to some guys. And, Curtis Samuel, I feel like that's the devil that Joe Brady again knows, right? So they can work it out, but they're going to have to play good defense, which is what concerns me. Anyways, talking about a team that added a nice piece on defense in Jared Verse and his teammate Fisk, the Rams. I think I like what they did because I think what Verse does is what Murphy doesn't do. Murphy does not win a ton of rushes. I'm talking about just winning. Like I think he's a better athlete than a rusher at this stage in his career, but I think eventually, and he was very productive last year, but a lot of it is he can really run and he can close windows and all that stuff. This Verse guy is a rolling ball of butcher knives. Like that's his style of play. And I think pairing two guys that have different styles of play can be very fruitful for the LA Rams. And they saw the need to go get somebody early to fortify pass rush. Gosh, if you're the Rams, how glad are you that you didn't make that Brian Burns trade a couple years ago?
Yeah, right. Sending the farm.
Yeah, so you end up with Verse and you end up with Murphy and a young core, and you go out and get a running back, which a lot of people would say, well, why? You liked your kid from Notre Dame last year. Well, he was hurt for a couple weeks, and they looked left-handed without him. Everything goes to the run game for them. You talk about a value in QB2. Value at running back 2, I don't know about at that place in the draft, but Blake Corum, they add him to the backfield. I thought they had a nice draft. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like Les Snead did not trade or move around in the first round. So this was a very unorthodox draft for them.
Yeah, but you can only not scratch the itch for so long. They moved up 13 spots for Fisk. It's like, all right, I won't move up in round 1, but you better know in round 2, I'm getting mine. I like the heavy investment in the defensive line, right? I think that no team in the league knows better that Aaron Donald, not just dominating on his own, but making life easier, so much easier for everybody else when he's just on the field. Once we lose that force multiplier, we know Kobe Turner's good. Kobe probably ain't going to look as good when he's not playing next to 99 anymore. That's just the reality of 99's gravity. And so being able to say, all right, with understanding that we still like some of our guys, we're going to spend a first-round pick at edge and a second-round pick at defensive tackle, and we're really going to make sure that we are prepared as best we can be for the post-Aaron Donald world is smart. this was the one spot, this defensive line, where the Rams couldn't invest in free agency.
Right.
They made multiple moves along the offensive line. They felt, I think, pretty good about the wide receiver room, Puka and Cooper Kupp. I'm sure they thought about adding more guys there, Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. But you know what? We'll stick with what we got. And then in the secondary is where they brought in Tre'Davious White. They brought in Darius Williams, and they brought in Cam Curl, right? They brought in all their veterans there. And they said, okay, the veterans are on the secondary. The young guys will go on the defensive line. And so they're hoping. They're hoping that Darius Williams can reach the level of play that he had when he was last year. They're hoping Tre'Davious White can stay healthy. And if they miss on that and they have to have the young guys again, like this secondary was really, really green last season, and they survived. They hung in there. They might need to readdress it next season. But this was the one spot defensive line where they really couldn't add anybody in March. And so in April, it makes sense to double.
And to qualify, I think I said Murphy. I can't get Byron Murphy out of my head because it's such a great fucking fit up in Seattle. I don't want to talk about that next, but Byron Young's the guy I'm talking about, the edge guy. I just don't think
the Tennessee
I don't think he wins a lot of rushes, but I think he's got great physical tools. And I think, some more time in the system, he'll be a lot better. But to add guys with different styles of play is really good. Okay. I think out of all the defensive guys, the first two guys that got picked really had as good a fits as anybody, Latu and Murphy. Talk to me about those two selections and how you see them fitting in those respective defenses.
Yeah. So Latu at 15 to the Colts, I love. Good clip of Chris Ballard with the nice hair, Chris Ballard. All right.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Draft day. With the lettuce, man.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I was like, who is this guy?
I did not know who it was at first. He's also not wearing. He was wearing just like a button down. He wasn't wearing team gear, and I was like, this could be anyone. I've never met this man before. It's Chris Ballard. It
looks like Jesse Clemens.
Yeah.
There's a great clip of him in the war room where after they take Latu, he just turns to the scouts. He's like, "We just got the best fucking rusher in the draft."
He is,
and they picked for the first defensive player, so you better. But he is, right? Latu, if you took the medical questions out of it, I think he would have been clearly edge one the entire process in terms of the hands, in terms of the effort, and then using the length, getting around, softening that outside corner so you can bend around it. Like he's all that in a bag of chips. Latu's a high impact player, and that's what they needed at edge rusher because last year the Colts were top 5 in team sacks.
Right.
It was unbelievable. They had like not great corner play. There's like a Gus Bradley defense. Like where did this come from? And it's because Kwity Paye has 8 sacks, and Dayo Adeyangbo was 8 sacks, and Samson Ebukam was 8 sacks, and DeForest Buckner, like Tyquan Lewis. They just had so many good like B-tier guys who were just producing and contributing, and it was like everybody, all hands on deck, all hands in the kitchen. It was a community effort. So if you're going to add an edge rusher to that, there's no real. You don't need to add a guy at 80.
No.
At 80 overall. Like he's just not going to really break that rotation. You already have the rotation. You need to add the star piece.
Yeah.
You need to add the crown jewel, and that's Latu. Latu has the potential to be a double-digit sack guy, to be the guy who draws the double teams, and he allows everybody to keep filling their role. And so Latu to the Colts.
I also think Latu, even if he ends up an 8 to 10 sack guy, he's going to affect things around him so much. Like where Kwity Paye is going to fall into 8 sacks, he's the beneficiary. Right. And I, with all due respect to the guy, I think you put it like they're B tier, which is very good rushers in the NFL, but
you need them.
But I mean, this guy, even if his production output isn't more than a Kwity Paye, or like immediately he's going to win rushes and force people off the spot because he's a contact hitter. And I mean that like as a compliment because, there's a lot of guys, and I talked about this last show, that they go for home runs the whole game. It's 2-3 moves. This guy is going to have a different move, whatever set you give him, and he's going to get people off the spot, and he's going to win a high percentage of his rushes. So I really like that. And I like the Murphy fit to me is awesome because of, I think of Matabike, and I think of the way that he was used in that defense. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, Murphy, man. I'll never forget turning on Texas film to watch Tavondre Sweat because he was the name, right? A big nose tackle on Texas. And the entire time, I'm like, who is this cat?
Yes.
Next to what are we talking about? And then Murphy ends up being that round 1 player. If you're going to invest in a Leonard Williams, right, and you're going to say, okay, we want this to be a piece for us, then you also want another defensive tackle who has some versatility to him, right? You need a guy who, we're going to line him up at the 3 tech, and this will be good and whatever. But when we want to bump Leonard's around, then we need to be able to bump the other guy around. We have to be able to kind of mix and match here. And the fact that Murphy can really play tackle to tackle and succeed because he's so weirdly good against the run. For a player of his size, he can just sit down and anchor against a double team like a 320-pounder.
Yeah.
Where are you getting this from? He has such weird, good strength when he's anchoring against the run. It's a force multiplier again. It helps you maximize Leonard Williams, and you get that good play, the defensive line, and all of a sudden, life's a little easier for Boye Mafe. It's a little bit easier for Derek Hall and Uchenna Nwosu and these other young edge rushers that you're trying to get to work. And so it feels like the Seahawks have invested a lot in defensive line lately. So it's like, all right, why spend a top 16 pick at defensive tackle? Because this might be the guy who completes the set. This might be the guy who lets everybody else be maximized in their roles. And all of a sudden, lift off on the Seattle defensive line. Love the pick.
I agree. You know, that drop target changes when you invest in the guys inside. And I think, you know, those two guys outside they have are speed guys. And so it really helps. I want to talk about the Chargers draft, because
speaking of the Chargers,
let's go to Buffalo.
Speaking of the Chargers.
I don't know that Alt's the best guy in the draft. I think he's safe. But I think there might be more talented guys. Having said that, picking up McConkey in the second, I feel like it's okay that they didn't go receiver early, because they don't feel like the delta's that big, right? And, you know, I remember a couple years ago, the Cincinnati example of, are we going to take Penei Sewell? Or are we going to take Jamar Chase? They take Jamar Chase. Everybody's like, see, you don't have to take a tackle first. Well, you also can. And I think it's an individual case-by-case basis, whether it works out or not. I think Ladd McConkey, his paint job affected where he was drafted. Okay. Now, I think they're had they picked up Ladd McConkey in the middle of the first, everybody's like, you got your receiver. I think they can end up having their receiver and a tackle coming out of this thing. And I actually like their draft. They also drafted a guy from Michigan.
Junior Colson.
Yeah, Colson in the third? In the third. So,
and then 2 7th-round flyers on receivers, which I love.
Yeah,
you guys figure it out.
Figure it out. The most competitive people in the draft, like those receivers are crazy. Like, you know, they're playing for their lives out there. So if you got a guy out there that you pick in the 7th round, he's going to be very, very motivated. So I actually like their draft.
Yeah, and the Sewell Chase theorem is always so funny to me, because both like the Lions and the Chiefs and the Bengals are thrilled with the guys that they got, and then they also both, like, you know, the Lions found their Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the Bengals went and signed their Orlando Brown, and like, listen, like, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat in the league, and you got to go. When you draft, you have to go for the guys who are going to fit your culture and fit your approach. And I think in this draft specifically, it was correct for the Chargers to believe that they were more likely to be successful going tackle 1, wide receiver 2, and getting a guy in the second round than going wide receiver 1 and tackle 2 and getting a guy at tackle in the second round. Just the speed with which the tackles went off the board. And then wide receiver, it's always a very deep class, because there's so many body types, there's so many roles, and there's so many athletes, and college teams can actually like pass the football now. They couldn't do this 20 years ago. So now, like, these wide receivers are actually developing 7-on-7 football. They get so many more reps. Like, there's just such a bounty of wide receivers available in round 2 and round 3, and I think in most drafts. And so to me, it feels appropriate to take the tackle top 10 and take the wide receiver in the second round. Ladd, I think, has a good fit with Justin Herbert too, because Ladd's such a timing guy, such a separation guy, gets where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there, catches everything. And there's nothing Herbert loves more than just feeding that guy and throwing that guy, beating the zone defenders, and being on time with everything. So the McConkey pick makes sense to me. Alt is interesting, right? Started at right tackle at Notre Dame, moved to the left, and I was going to move back to the right to leave Rashawn Slater on the left. I agree with you. There's a safety to him. I think that you said Ladd, you know, the paint job affected where he was drafted. I think the shirt affected where Joel was drafted. Notre Dame. And we sure like those gold caps. But I the other thing with Alt that's weird is that he also like was a high school tight end. Like he recently, like, you know, sized up to be an offensive tackle. So you can argue there's development, there's meat on the bone, and I would hear that too. And so it was such a talented tackle class in the top 10, top 15 that whoever took the first tackle, I was always going to be like, I don't know. There's some other guys, right? It was a very difficult tackle class to parse.
All right. You mentioned Alt being the first. The 8th was Tyler Guyton at 29. Then there was a cliff to 55.
I really like Guyton.
All right. So what are the chances that he can become one of those top 4 of those 8? Did he belong in the top 8 before the cliff? Dallas at 24 goes to 29 and also picks up 73, which turns into Cooper Beebe. But I've heard, you know, Dallas was the come on, do something.
Cooper Beebe not related to Don Beebe.
I think it's too early to tell.
All right.
Yeah. Tyler, I struggled with Guyton, Chris. I didn't think he had enough sand in his pants. I thought he was a little bit light on stilts. I struggled with power.
I'm not saying I would have taken him high, but I like him.
Yeah.
He's an NFL player. He's going to play a long time. Maybe. He could be gone next year.
Welcome to the draft.
I won't even revisit it. I was Brian Edwards. I'm still waiting. All right. So,
how do you consume the draft, Ben? Because we had good vibes watching the draft, and then muscle memory took me to
macro.
Twitter.
I'm still going micro.
Like, hold on, like 4 times. And then the 4 times I went to Twitter, I see Jordan Schultz tipping a pick, and then Ben Solak commenting about a pick.
Yeah.
Did Roger Goodell tell you the pick before you knew it at any point on Thursday?
Roger tells me a couple weeks out, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
He just,
okay,
exactly. Drops the first couple rounds. Yeah, it's in an email. He just sends it. No, I the nice thing is I used to be, like, when I was doing draft coverage, that was what I did before I did the Ringer. It was like, all right, you're on a set, like you're covering all 7 rounds. So now the draft for me is, I love kicking my feet up. I put ESPN on, I have NFL Network on the other screen. I'll be scrolling Twitter. If I'm getting if I see a pick on Twitter, it doesn't break my heart. Oh, dang it. Like, software was announced, crazy. And if I'm, off Twitter and I'm doing something else, I'm writing up grades or whatever, and I'm seeing picks as they come, that's fun for me too. The draft is, it's so much nicer to just be watching it as a tweeter. That's why we canceled our
live stream the other night. We were supposed to do a live stream. Like 5 people were like, "Where's the live stream?" I'm like, "Sorry, dude."
Yeah, it turns out filling 4 hours of the first round with only 32 picks is extremely tough. Like, it's a hard thing to do, man. And if everyone's watching ESPN anyway, then forget about it.
I want to ask you about 2 trades and then let you out of here, but or possible trades. The Trey Hendrickson thing. He's talking about, hey, I'd like to be traded and I might retire, which to me is like, it's not really, you're not helping the negotiation for yourself there. But I think Trey would be really useful for a number of teams. Do you think something gets done? And then also the same franchise going with Mims. What does that say? Because they have 2 tackles. They won't have him forever, but this kid, big developmental piece, how are they going to use him early? Are they going to play him inside? Is he just depth? Is it just one of these things where they know he's not ready because he's raw, but eventually he's going to be a stud? Yeah.
So Trey Hendrickson, I wonder how many NFL fans know that Trey Hendrickson's had at least 13 sacks in 3 of the last 4 years.
Nobody,
like Trey Henderson, dude. And I'll be the first to say, when they gave that deal out of New Orleans, I was like, you are outside of your melons. What are we talking about? And Trey Henderson made me eat my words. He's such he's such a good player doing what he does well, winning with that first step now. Like, this is reliable. And so as long as that explosiveness stays, he's going to stay a double-digit sack guy. Now, I understand why he's trying to get out of Cincy, why he's trying to get more money from Cincy. Cincinnati is not ready for a post-Trey Hendrickson world. I would be stunned if they moved him. Right. Sam Hubbard having the injury issues on the other side of defensive end. They drafted Joseph Osai in the 3rd round a few years ago to be ready to replace Hendrickson. He's not there. They drafted Miles Murphy in the 1st round last year to replace Judrick Henderson. He's not there. Like, they are bereft for edge play. But
Reader's gone
so,
inside.
He is not. I don't see him getting out of Cincinnati at all. So that's a tricky one to track. Amarius Mims, firstly, loves me an Amarius Mims. Just give me a 6'8" behemoth who can run. Oh, goodness gracious. And at Cincinnati, they really like those big tackles, right? They got Orlando Brown on the left and Trent Brown on the right now. They are supersized. The Trent Brown contract is a 1-year deal, right? They are saying they wanted to walk into the draft with, okay, if we don't get a tackle, we at least have a guy who can handle this for us for a year. I think they view Brown as a 1-year rental, and there's also health concerns with Trent Brown. And so Mims, to me, I think they will onboard him at tackle. Obviously, he played right at Georgia, but not a ton of experience. So I'm sure they'll give him some reps at left as well in camp. And then you're prepared for injury to either Orlando or Trent. And I certainly think Mims is who they plan to be their 25 starter at right tackle. And honestly, I think that's the right approach. Like, this line for them, with the amount of injuries that Joe Burrow has had, I know, like, Cincinnati, man, you want to go and add to that pass rush. You want to go and prepare for the T. Higgins departure. And they did that last year with some of their picks. But you really need to make sure you protect Joe, because Joe's getting banged up at this point early in his career. And that's the golden goose. If Joe's career ends early because he's losing athleticism or he's getting hurt too much, it's ball game. So investing in the line to me makes sense.
Yeah, and also investing in big bodies, because I think Joe can step up. He can navigate the pocket. But one thing he can't do is deal with, and nobody can, with some 360-pound guy's fucking cleats on his toes, which is how he got hurt last year, trying to throw the ball. Orlando got bowled into him, and his hand lands on, I forget who it was. I think it was Jonathan Grenard. It landed on Orlando because Grenard bowled him back into Joe, and I just think
was it Clowney? Was it the Ravens? I can never remember.
He got hurt in the Texans game.
Yeah,
he got hurt in the Texans game. He came out in the Ravens game. But when he got hurt
that was right.
first,
that's when he got moved. You
know, we kind of had this
right. We had the photos of him coming off the plane, with the cast.
And so I went back through that game, and it was like early in the game, and Orlando got bowled back into him. You
Zaprudered it. I forgot about that.
And I was like, man, they need to figure out a way. I mean, I know Orlando's real big and everything, but they got to anchor, because that's the one thing he can't deal with, and nobody can. It's like he's got to be able to set his feet and climb the pocket. And, you know, the one place you can't get beat is through you. And so I think it's a good move for them. And I love your thinking, like, onboard him. Okay, and then the last one is Ayuk going to get moved? Like, does the Ricky Pearsall pick, the kid from Florida? He's from Florida. Does that indicate something, or does it not?
I definitely think it indicates that they are ready for the post Ayuk world. Because even if they don't have 1 year left on the deal, right? And behind him, you have Ronnie Bell and, you know, Juwan Jennings, but Jennings only has 1 year left on the deal. And so I think that they knew they needed to be prepared for some of the post Ayuk worlds. I think if Ayuk was to be moved, it was more likely to happen in the last few days before the draft and into round 1. There were a lot of reports that they were calling a lot in round 1, talking about a Debo move, talking about an Ayuk move. The fact that it didn't happen to me means it's now unlikely to happen. Man, Brandon Ayuk cost about $28 million last week. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown signed for 30, and A.J. Brown signed for 32. It's like Brandon Ayuk doesn't cost $28 million anymore.
No,
that's the issue, right?
Is
if they couldn't get close on an extension before the draft to make Ayuk happy, to keep him in San Francisco, make the money right, I'm not sure how they get it done afterwards. They really would have to give a lot of ground. And so to me, I expect Ayuk to be a Niner in 24. Does he show up to camp? Show up in week 1? We'll find out. But I expect him to play. And then I think after that, you're looking at the potential for free agency and Pearsall stepping into those shoes.
If you were John Lynch, Macon, and Ben, and say there was a way to trade one of the two players, Debo or Ayuk, who are you trading?
Keep Ayuk.
I'm keeping Ayuk.
I want to keep Debo. It's tough. I'll tell you why it's tough. I do think Debo is more integral to that offense in terms of the role that he fills than Ayuk is. But in terms of health and age and long-term availability,
style of play,
you have to be more worried. Exactly, Debo, and that role inherently is a physical role, right? You're handing him the ball, you are giving him shots after shots, and Rappaport had a report about this earlier this week where he said they view Debo as a bigger key to the offense, is more integral to the offense, and that's true, but that doesn't mean less replaceable, because he's kind of the sort of role that you have to be willing to have a guy in the hopper for. The fact that at 32, at 31, they had Xavier Legette, right? 6'3", 233,
about the
4
3
3
everybody else. I just want to
I love him so much, right?
See him run around.
You have that thick body type, that guy who can run with the football and maybe be a Debo replacement. And you have a Pearsall who's more of a smooth route runner, separator. The fact that they went for a Pearsall indicates to me that they kind of view Debo as more of the unmovable piece. So, and I get that. I really do.
Couldn't they look at Legette and say, hey, age and injury and that sort of thing, or whatever
late
it was?
Breakout. They didn't like him.
Yeah, they just might not have liked him. If I was the Niners and I could wave a magic wand, I'd have traded Debo, gotten everything I could for him, paid Ayuk, and gone out and got Cordero Patterson. And say, hey, you do what Debo did. I don't care if you're a poor man's Debo. Just do it, because that's what you need. You need that. It's really Debo is explosive, but it's the threat of a Debo. And I'm not just talking about the explosives. I'm talking about the threat of having that wrinkle in your offense to occupy eyes. They might not be the same amount of big plays that Debo might get you, but you got to find somebody to play that role eventually, because you play your whole season and Brock Purdy gets used to running one kind of offense. And then if Debo's dinged for the wild card, you could lose the wild card game. If Debo's dinged for the divisional round, you could lose the divisional round game. So to me, it's you do set yourself up for a risk.
Yeah, and you're trying. What you're doing is you're trying to win a game on Tuesday, right? By saying, hey, we have this sucker, we'll put in the backfield, we'll jet sweep and touch him. So now you have to be prepared for all these constraint plays and all these parts of the playbook that just, if you're not ready for them, we'll just beat you on screens.
That's exactly
Screw
right.
you. So you have to spend a ton of time dealing with this, and that just puts you on the back foot defensively. If you lose a Debo, and that's where with Cordero Patterson, you say, okay, fit him into the role. There's veracity there. There's really
that
good
guy can still kill you.
Yeah. Then you watch Debo on an 18-yard dig, adjust to a football 4 feet behind him, make a catch in the face, you go, oh, shoot, that's right. He can also do that.
That's
what makes
cool.
Debo 101.
That stuff's cool. But maybe the kid from Florida can do it too. We'll see.
Hey, Ben, quick two-parter
Yes, sir.
To get you out of here, try to stay with me. It appears that you've been standing for the entirety of this interview. Are you seeing any health benefits from standing? And two, what are you drinking from that mason jar?
Yeah. I'm progressing. Yeah, the health benefits. I'm becoming more and more like McAfee every day. It's great. I love it. I'm going to start wearing all black.
That Baker wide receiver he's standing in there in the room.
Yeah. I like the standing desk. I got like ankle problems and such. And so I'm supposed to stand a lot more and pay attention to it. And so I always use podcasts as a good opportunity. You see me, I've been like stretching this whole time. I'm always like, trying to fiddle around with it a little bit. I like the standing desk. I feel like I get more energy when I'm standing. I can be energetic on the pod.
Try that
sitting.
sometime.
Yeah,
exactly. He's got great energy. Sometimes when I listen to him, I'm like, man, he's really fucking excited.
But maybe poor ankle flexion?
Yeah, he might have poor ankle flexion.
Yeah. Listen, if I would not clear medical rechecks at the combine, all right? They'd flag me for sure. And then, dude, it's iced coffee season. We got the first like sunny, warm weather up here in Michigan last couple of weeks. So now every morning I'm on my white girl grind. All right, I got the iced coffee going.
Yeah, with what do you like it with all the fixins?
I got it's oat milk. I'll be honest.
Okay. It's white girl special for sure.
Gen Z, absolutely. Yeah, I don't drink regular milk. Come on now.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time, Ben. I'm happy for you. You get to sit around for a little bit and not do anything.
Well, I got our first kids coming in a couple of weeks, and so I'm not gonna be sitting around too much. Yes,
Plural.
sir. Yeah. So I'll be off paternity leave. So it's off, but it's not really off, is it?
Was it plural?
I heard plural. Is it
What's
plural?
No, I think he was saying my first kid's coming in a couple weeks.
Oh,
yeah,
apostrophe.
Yeah.
Not
Apostrophe.
Oh,
sorry for that.
Boy or girl?
We're having a girl, which I'm real excited about.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
All right, and if you could, your future daughter, if she becomes a football fan, who do you want her favorite player to be? And then
that's a great question. I think so. I grew up an Eagles fan. I grew up on like Trotter, but I also grew up on Brian Dawkins, Brian Westbrook. Those are my guys. So if she's an Eagle fan, and we get like, if Quinion Mitchell is like a Lito Shepherd or Sheldon Brown, dude, I remember watching those guys in mid 2000s. That was that's
Sheldon Brown killed Steven Jackson in the open field. My first NFL game. I'll never forget seeing Steven Jackson. I've told this story before. Like Ben, it's like you watch this guy all camp and he's just obliterating people, and nobody wants to get in his way. In our very first game, we're down 30 at the link, and Sheldon Brown just decapitates him. And he's not even a star; he's like just a good player. I'm like, this is the NFL. Shout out to Sheldon Brown.
I'll never forget that Brown hit on Jackson and then Doc on Algie Crumpler. Knowing what I know now, like I would not have celebrated that hit maybe as much as I did. But when I was 7 or whatever, and I saw that hit, I was like, this is the only thing I want to do for the rest of my life is to just detonate on tight ends like Brian Dawkins. And then, physically, I was not able to achieve that, unfortunately. But still, man.
There's still hope. We could develop him.
We'll
Ben Solak, you can catch him on the ring at the Ringer. You can catch him on the Philly Special podcast, and as a frequent guest on the Bill Simmons podcast. And I know Bill's probably very happy you like Drake May. So, Ben, appreciate the time, and we'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, appreciate you, fellas. Thank you.